Is there any difference between product owner, product manager, and product master? If yes, what is the difference?
So I don't think well, I haven't really been trying to introduce the term product master. I don't think that's worth me trying to do. I don't think there's a huge amount of value in that. So is there a difference between a product owner and a product manager? I would say yes, but I think depending on where you are, what organization you're in, for example, then the difference would be different. And I think that's just because different organizations see those terms as different things. That could be baggage, it could be history, it could be culture.
Is it good, or it's a good practice to have a Scrum Master get involved from a product vision time to understand how the product management in terms of bettering it, understanding the product management more better? Does it help Scrum Master do it right from identifying the vision point of view itself?
So I think yes, and I think even more important than that is that the Scrum Masters that I've seen do really, really well will actually bring the product side and the development side closer together earlier on.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast by Agile Coaching Roundtable, ACRT. In this episode, we uncover the challenges of product mastery and agile practices. In today's episode, we have the privilege of hosting Geoff Watts, an expert agile leadership coach. As one of the first certified Scrum trainers in the world and the founder of the Agile Mastery Institute, Geoff brings a wealth of experience in guiding individuals and teams become good to great teams through teaching, coaching, and mentoring. Join us as we delve into the nuances of product management, distinguishing the roles of product owner, product manager, and product master, and exploring emerging trends that agile practitioners should keep on their radar. Get ready for a knowledge-packed session that aims to elevate your understanding of agile product management. So without further ado, let's get started.
Geoff, welcome to the podcast by Agile Coaching Roundtable. It's a great honor for us to have you on our show, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's very exciting for us to have a conversation with you.
No, it's lovely to be here.
Okay, so to begin with the conversation, so today we want to have a discussion with you, or maybe your perspective, or maybe talk about product mastery, the book that you have written. So I think most of us as an agile coaches or scrum masters, this is the area I feel we bit lag behind, especially when we talk about product management. And most of our listeners are also either scrum masters or aspiring scrum masters or agile coaches. So I think it would be great opportunity for us to learn from you about the product mastery. So to begin with, I just have a very basic question. What is product mastery?
What is product mastery? Well, it might seem like a basic question, but it's not necessarily a basic answer. So product mastery is a term that I use to help frame the development of just really, really good product management in the agile space. And it's something that evolved over years, largely through accident and partly through deliberate attachment. So my first book was Scrum Mastery, which was aimed at Scrum Masters, and the idea of trying to look at the role and the responsibilities of that role in something more than just the basics, more than just the mechanics, and really getting to grips with the nuances and the complexities of the role. And I think the product role, whether you call them a product owner or a product manager or whatever you call them, the role or responsibilities looking at the product side of things is just as complex, if not perhaps more complex, than the role of the Scrum Master. And it's something I think you touched on there. It's something that we haven't really done brilliantly. We haven't addressed perfectly over the years for lots of reasons. And so my attempt was to look at a part of that role that got often overlooked, and that's the self-awareness, self-management, emotional intelligence side of the role. Because regardless of what framework you use, regardless of what tools and techniques you use, regardless of the life cycle that you use, until the day that the robots take over, it's a human that's doing this role. And as human beings, we're all amazing, but we all have challenges, and quite a lot of those challenges are very common to the problems that product leadership faces. So I talk a lot about, yes, we need roadmaps, and we need visions, and we need backlogs, and we need all these types of things. But probably more than anything else, we need to master ourselves as product people. We need to work out what's going on for us when we are faced with the difficulty of making decisions with incomplete information, which we're going to have to do a lot in the product space. So what's going on for us? Is it a bit of perfectionism? Is it a bit of people pleasing? Is it a bit of imposter syndrome? Is it a combination of those things? And just learning more about ourselves will allow us to tackle those situations a lot better, a lot more mindfully.
So, thank you for sharing that. Maybe to start with, Geoff, and you also spoke about, in terms of product management. So, could you elaborate more? In terms of breaking down what is product management. For example, if we start a new product, then what would be the product management for that product look like? If you can just simplify it for our listeners.
Well, simplify it. I think the honest answer is no. I probably can't simplify it, because it is very complex, and it kind of depends on the context. So there'll be some situations where you would follow a very traditional product management lifecycle almost, but there are more and more situations these days where you're looking at much more of an inspect and adapt, much more of an empirical approach. I think almost regardless of the context, I think there's a huge element of discovery these days, because historically we've been very good at solving problems, but not necessarily solving the right problems. And
Wow.
I think one of the things that I've found over the years is the biggest area of waste is solving the wrong problem well. And I've been involved with lots of organizations who've had what we call technical successes, where product development has come in on time, come in on budget, delivered all the requirements that we've been asked of, and yet our customers, our users, aren't happy with what we've done because we didn't ask them, or we didn't respond to feedback, and we just ended up delivering what was asked for rather than what was actually needed. So that regardless of what type of approach, what type of product, the more complex, the more unknown, the more rapidly changing, the more important it is to put a lot of time and effort and energy into actually discovering what the problem is that we're looking to solve here. And again, I think this comes back a lot to understanding yourself, because a lot of product, I was brought up with the idea that a lot of products were formed by entrepreneurs who were solving their own problems. And I think that's probably still true to a degree. But when it comes to most product development these days, we've got to get out of our head about us being the user, because we don't represent the vast majority of our people. We've all got our cognitive biases, and if we design for us, we are not designing for our ultimate users or our customers. So I think that's a huge part of it, working out what the right problem is. And that might change over time, and it will probably change a lot quicker than it ever used to. But then there's an element of, well, delivering chunks of that solution, whatever that solution turns out to be, in a way that allows us to minimize our risk and maximize our value, both in terms of customer value, but also our own personal learning, as quickly and as iteratively as possible, rather than all at the end.
Wow, that's a brilliant way of explaining. Getting into or understanding the real users, or maybe trying to solve the right problems is something I feel is the I think clue over here, or maybe the cue wherein which we need to understand that not every problem is the right problem, and we try to just puzzle like a puzzle, we try to fit in our solutions and see whether it fits or not, rather than understanding what actually the problem is and getting into the core of the problem. And one interesting point you mentioned, Geoff, is that it cannot be simplified, and depending upon the type of the product or maybe the solution that they work, they might be using the traditional product management as well, right? So this makes me curious to know, does product management processes differ from the type of the products? For an example, not every organization builds product. Some provide solutions or services, and these services could be their products. So in this case, will the product management process differ from organization, or what could be the commonalities in the product management processes?
I think my own personal opinion these days is the main differentiator is the degree of software. So the more digital, the more that a product includes, involves, uses, incorporates digital software, then the more then you've got that type of product, whether that's a physical product that uses software, or whether it's a software service. And then you've got the more hardware type physical products that aren't very software based. I think those are your two differences. I think fundamentally though, the principles are the same. Are we solving the problems, the right problems? Are we solving them in the right way? And are we working out how we can reduce the risk, maximize the learning, and maximize the value along the way? I think the biggest difference really is around, well, there are two really. One is around cycle time. So what is the batch size? What's the actual time it takes to deliver an increment? And you can't just update the firmware on a desk, right, or something like that. You can't just change the software version. So that any physical change is potentially going to have a bigger impact. But that's something that changes dramatically and has changed dramatically anyway. I'm always drawn back to, this might sound like a silly example now, but it was quite a formative one for me at the time. So about 20 years ago, I was a project manager trying to do something with Scrum at a telecoms company. And our average length of project to deliver some kind of product or service was 2 years. That meant some were longer, some were shorter, but on average it was 2 years. And we were in the part of the organization that was for rapid application development. So we were supposed to be doing something in really quick timescales, like 9 months. And I was trying to challenge that. So, well, do we really need to take 9 months? Could we do something in 3 months? And I had a customer who was up for the challenge. They prioritized and worked out how to get the most important stuff and de-risk it. But the biggest bottleneck, the biggest problem that we needed to overcome was that in order to get something actually released, we needed to order a physical server to host the service on. And the lead time was a year to get a new server. And I needed to tell the person who ordered the service exactly what specification we wanted in advance. But I didn't know, because we didn't know what the requirements were going to be. And so that was a big challenge for us as an organization. It was a good challenge because it forced us to ask the question, well, if we want to deliver software and services and products quicker, how can we reduce the cycle time of getting our servers in place and the cost of doing so? Which ultimately led to virtualization and cloud and cloud computing and stuff like that. And I think the same is true of physical products. You see, if the physical design is going to have a significant impact on its usability and value, we need to reduce the cost of finding that out, whether that be through 3D printing or simulation or prototyping or something. So it's constantly challenging us to think, how can we reduce the cost of finding the unknown out?
Okay. So since you did mention about one of the important elements that most of everyone is looking out is on the metrics part, right? And then when we talk about metrics, I mean, what are the key metrics for product managers in when they definitely work in agile space or maybe specific to Scrum? What are the things that they need to look at from a metrics point of view?
The metrics, they're almost always a challenging topic. So any metric, once we know what it is, can be gamed and it can become a problem. even the best metrics. So I think, but then having said that, I think it's essential for product leaders, I tend to call them product leaders rather than product owners or managers, product leaders to have some metrics in mind, because otherwise they don't know whether their confirmation bias is getting in the way, they don't have any data to make decisions with, and they're just relying on their gut, their instinct, or their cognitive biases. So having some metrics is really, really useful. And the biggest difficulty I find for most product people is not having the benchmarks data to begin with. So I might say, well, the metric here is customer acquisition, or lifetime customer value. Well, what's our current benchmark that we know, so we know whether we're getting better or worse? We might be looking at customer satisfaction. Well, do we know how satisfied our customers are right now? And unless we have that data, any changes to that system or that product, it's not going to tell us anything really. So whatever the objectives are, and I think most products will have their own metrics, and even one product over the course of its life will have different metrics. So to begin with, it might be around getting new customers. I might not be worried about making a profit. In fact, I might be happy to make a loss to begin with if I can get customers on there and I can learn. But then later on, I might be looking about profitability and efficiency and utilization and unit cost and so on. So looking at where we are in the product life cycle, looking at what the strategic goals are, looking at something that isn't just what you might call a vanity metric. It actually gives us something really useful and allows us to make more unemotional decisions. Because yes, we need, I think there's still a big part to be played in decision making with your head, your heart, your gut, your instinct, but it's got to be coupled with data as well. So I think it's pretty well established now that you're not looking for outputs, you're looking for outcomes. I think that's pretty well established now, and historically it's been much easier to measure output rather than outcome, but that's nowhere near as important.
Absolutely, I completely align to that. I mean, when we talk about metrics, basically in terms of what are certain actionable items that we can figure out based on this data. And when we talk about metrics, it definitely helps us to make an informed decision rather than just having a data from a data point of view. But if it's not giving us or any indication of to make that informed decision, I don't think so that data would make any or will solve any purpose for anyone who is using or is supposed to be using that.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we talked about product owners and product managers, right? So I just want to understand, is there any difference between product owner, product manager, and product master? If yes, what is the difference?
So I don't think I haven't really been trying to introduce the term product master. I don't think that's worth me trying to do. I don't think there's a huge amount of value in that. So is there a difference between a product owner and a product manager? I would say yes, but I think depending on where you are, what organization you're in, for example, then the difference would be different. And I think that's just because different organizations see those terms as different things. That could be baggage, it could be history, it could be culture. There's I think there's probably a few common differences, but for me, I've seen so many overlaps that I don't think it's a really valuable discussion for most organizations to have. Should we call them product owners? Should we call them product managers? And I think one of the changes to the Scrum Guide, which I thought was interesting, was a shift from roles to responsibilities or accountabilities. And that sense of, we need someone who can be accountable for this stuff, who can take responsibility for this stuff, but it doesn't have to be the same person. And I've not got a problem with product owners reporting to product managers. I've not got a problem with product owners being tactical and product managers being strategic. I've not got a problem with it being the other way around. To be honest, I really don't care what people are called. I never really have done. For me, but I completely understand that in a lot of organizations that is a significant thing. I don't want to underplay it, but for me, it's are we doing the right things that the product needs and the organization needs for its products to be successful? I think with most, there was even recently Airbnb saying, well, we're not using product managers anymore, but we're going for product marketers. And again, I think that's it's not really an issue. I think it's, what are we doing? Are we doing the right things? Are we enabling people to do what needs to be done? Are we supporting them in the skills and the development and the psychological aspect of doing this role well? Are we giving them the tools to find stuff out and make decisions and learn and so on, regardless of what they're called?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience that I have also worked with different Scrum teams or maybe a group of multiple Scrum teams. It happens that there might be a product owner aligned to a team, and then maybe there might be a product manager who would totally look into from an entire managing point of view for each of the Scrum teams, and then the group of product owner might in a certain way have those alignments with them. And certainly the most important aspect that you put across is like, what are the things that they are doing as an individual, whether they are helping out teams, whether they are taking up those accountabilities or responsibilities as per their expectations. So that is more important over here. And coming to the other point that you definitely brought or you mentioned about is how the update on Scrum was in 2020. So there is again an important thing that we wanted to check with, maybe to discuss here is how can Scrum Masters coach product owners effectively, while working with a Scrum team?
So I think that's a really good question. I think it's an important question, and I think that actually in English we have this phrase: it opens up a can of worms. I don't really know where that phrase comes from. I don't really know where it comes from, but it's a question that then leads to more questions. But for me, it starts us talking about, so what do we mean by coaching? And I think that's an important conversation to have, because I was brought up. My professional career, when I started my first real job, I had two roles. So my first role was project manager, which very quickly became Scrum Master. But the second part of that role was coach. So I was taught to be a professional coach, and by that I mean helping people that I didn't know the details of their job, helping them work out how to do their job better. Not for me to work out how to do their job better, for me to help them to work out how to do their job better. And that's how I've always understood the term coach, even though I've also been involved in sports coaching, which typically has a different interpretation to that. But where am I going with this? Well, I worked at a telecoms company for 6 years, and I still to this day don't know how a telephone works. I've worked at pharmaceutical companies, and I don't know how drugs are developed. I've worked at investment banks, and I have no idea how financial instruments and derivatives are created and managed. And I've still been able to help people in all of those industries and more be successful without knowledge of the domain. That's because I operate on the principle that the person that has the problem in their mind is the best place to find the solution. And that, I think, is essentially the question that we need to answer here. Because if we ascribe to that view of coaching, then it's absolutely fine. A Scrum Master can coach the product owner. If we're prescribing a different view of coaching, where that person needs to understand product management in order to be able to coach somebody, then we're in a completely different realm. And I would argue that that's impossible. I think if we look at it that way, a Scrum Master cannot expect to coach a product owner. Personally, I wouldn't call that coaching. I would call that mentoring or advising or consulting. And that's fine. And a product owner probably will, and most of the best product people that I know will have mentors. They will have other types of support, but they will also be open to the help of somebody who doesn't understand their problem. Years ago, I used to say every Scrum team should have a 5-year-old, because 5-year-olds ask the best questions, because they're just silly questions, really. But they take out all of the bias, all of the half understood truths, all of the cognitive biases, and they just ask something really, really simple, really, really clear, really, really direct, or really, really obtuse that makes people think about their problem differently. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, I think Scrum Masters are the perfect person to be coaching a product owner. I would say that, though, because that's who I am and that's what I am. But yeah, there are other types of support available.
So if I understand it correctly, maybe based on what you put across as a thought, saying that a Scrum Master should be able to help out a product owner, but even if it is an expectation that the Scrum Master needs to get into detail of what domain or specific of the product in terms of maybe as you gave a perspective or telecom, or maybe how a phone works, or maybe a pharma industry or pharmaceutical industry where how a drugs is basically created. Maybe that is where not the Scrum Master can get into, or maybe that is not a Scrum Master's expectation should be.
That's my view. Yeah, I don't think as Scrum Masters should be worrying about developing their domain knowledge skills. I think they should be worrying about their coaching skills, about their emotional intelligence skills, around their people relationship building skills, and so on, and self-awareness.
Wow. So this is, I think this question itself will answer or uncover so many things that so many people think about. Should a Scrum Master be coaching the product owner? If yes, then how are we going to do justice to coaching a product owner? If no, then why do we think? And there are so many things people discuss about that. How can we effectively coach the product owner at the first place? So thank you for giving such a detailed answer along with the example that will really help our listeners. So since we are talking about Scrum and Scrum Guide, right? So I mean, I would want to understand your perspective. Why is there less mention about project management in the Scrum Guide?
Project management or product management?
Sorry, product management in the Scrum Guide. Yeah.
I think it's a really good question, and I don't actually have a very good answer to that, because it's been a long time since I've spoken to Ken and Geoff about the Scrum Guide, and to be honest, quite a lot of the changes to the Scrum Guide in the recent years I haven't really been a big fan of. But so one of the things that kind of makes me a little bit sad is that the distance between Scrum and the Agile community and the traditional product community has actually widened, I think, over the years rather than narrowed. And it's not too dissimilar to, I don't think anyway, just from where I'm sitting. When I started back at that telecoms company, we had a chief information officer. So he was effectively head of the IT part of the organization, who said, we're going to do Agile, we're going to do Scrum, but before we go and upset and worry and stress out the business, and for those listening rather than watching, I did that thing with my fingers because the business is a very vague term, but that's what they called it. He said, before we go and worry that part of the organization, we need to get our house in order. So we need to work out how we're going to do Agile within the IT department. And I can kind of empathize with where he was coming from there, because it was so new, it was so different, and when you change something, things get messy, and so it could be seen as a little bit embarrassing, a little bit vulnerable. Yeah, if we're going to go and try and get the confidence and support of the money-making part of the organization as they saw it then having some confidence in what we're doing and how we're doing it might help. So I can kind of give him some credit for that. However, what it led to was the business feeling like Agile was being done to them, when actually it was being done for them. The aim was to help them get more value and reduce the risk and have fewer of these technical successes. But it felt like it was being done to them because they weren't involved in it, and it was an IT initiative. And I think that's something that was very similar, I think, to the product community. It was something that was felt to be a software thing, because the Agile Manifesto was written by software people, and it was very software focused and software centric, and there weren't really enough efforts to actually bridge that gap, to build that almost alliance with the product community, for it to be felt as something that we were doing together for the benefit of Agile product development as a discipline. That's my view anyway, and I think unfortunately not really enough has been done to bridge that gap, and it's just naturally widened with skepticism and pessimism and cynicism, and almost at some point attacks between the different communities, which just, as I said, it makes me a little bit sad.
That's again really amazing to understand your perspective over here, and I mean to extension to what you said, and again the context is still somewhat the same. Is it good, or it's a good practice to have a Scrum Master get involved from a product vision time to understand how the product management in terms of bettering it, understanding the product management more better? Does it help Scrum Master do it right from identifying the vision point of view itself?
So I think yes, and I think even more important than that is that the Scrum Masters that I've seen do really, really well will actually bring the product side and the development side closer together earlier on. So it won't be a case of, well, the product person, the product leadership goes out there to find the vision, and once they've decided on it, then go and speak to the development team. Because more and more products these days have a much bigger digital software element to them, even something as physical as a car is very software focused, for example, then actually understanding the value, we need to understand the digital and the software side of things more earlier. So as well as, I think it's more important than the Scrum Master getting involved in the vision. The Scrum Master brings the people who want something and the people who are doing something together early. And I think that goes all the way back to my first answer, which is finding out what the right problem to solve is quicker.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the perspective or the intention of asking that question was like Scrum Masters, while working, it becomes that maybe we work as a consultant more with the teams, and so while working as a consultant, maybe the Scrum Master might land up maybe the last person landing onto the team, and by that time the product is already identified and everything in terms of the product part is done, and then the Scrum Master then becomes more of an operational manager in terms of trying to help the team execute what is already identified as a vision. So that was the intention of asking that question, and again thank you for sharing your perspective over here.
And typically after the product backlog is identified to some extent is where people think of maybe hiring the Scrum Master, because now this product vision is there and we have certain amount of requirements already there in the product backlog, and this is the right time for us to get started with sprinting, is why we need a Scrum Master, and then let's hire the Scrum Master and get into it. So that is the reason why I feel this could be also one of the reasons why Scrum Masters do not understand the product management side of things, and second, they don't have that really great set of skill set in coaching the product owners also. So if they don't understand the full context of what the product management is. So it's like there is a world before and after the product backlog, right? So that is where most of the Scrum Masters don't get involved. So maybe that is the reason why I think Vivek, you asked this question.
Absolutely true.
Yes. So since we are talking about the product owners and product managers, right? So I just wanted to understand what are the characteristics of a good product manager and a great product manager.
So I've got a lot that, you mentioned my book, Product Mastery, and it's something that that's the focus of the book is really, good product owners know what's needed. Great product owners know what can wait. That's an example, right? It's really good to know what's important enough, what our people actually need, what our users and our customers actually need. That is a good thing. But what's even more valuable, I think, is knowing what can actually be, it's needed, but it can wait. Because there are so many things that we can do right now, but we can't do everything. And even if we could, we still need to prioritize. So the best product people, the best product leaders are able to look at all these really good, valuable, important things and say, yes, that's important, and it can wait. That's one example. Yeah. So anything that I look at 6 main characteristics really. One is around decisiveness, being able to make decisions with incomplete information, ruthless prioritization for the value, for the good of the product, being informed and helping other people be informed, finding out as much information as quickly as possible and disseminating that information as quickly as possible so that we aren't the bottleneck and we can get other people engaged. Versatility. The best product leaders realize that there are times when they need to provide different types of leadership in the product development effort. There'll be times when they need to be really quite firm and say, no, this is exactly how I want it to be. But there'll be other times when they say, well, actually, I'm probably not the right person to decide this, so I'm going to delegate that, or I'm going to have a more collaborative decision-making process, or so on. But being able to flex depending on the context, I think is really, really important. They need to empower other people. So bringing people into the decision-making process, giving people the authority and the autonomy to make decisions, so that they're not the person who's the bottleneck and everything has to be escalated to them and filtered down. And then they also need to empower themselves. In order for them to make progress, they'll often need to make a case, prove their decision-making capability, prove their thought process, make other people more comfortable with the ambiguity that they're working within. And then you're never going to please everyone as a product person. You shouldn't be trying to please everyone as a product person. Don't go into this role if making friends is your goal. And that being able to negotiate with very important, very powerful, very passionate, very caring, and sometimes very assertive, shall we say, stakeholders, and being able to negotiate with them and bring them on the journey when not necessarily always getting what they want all the time, and being able to negotiate with themselves, because there'll be times when my head is saying one thing, my heart's saying another, my gut's saying another. How am I going to work that through? And the best product owners aren't paralyzed by the complexity, by the uncertainty. They're not overwhelmed by all the options that are in front of them. They can see through that complexity and make imperfect decisions quickly and learn quickly.
Yes, and maybe again in my experience, or maybe based on your perspective, it makes more sense for the product owner to have certain core skills in terms of or maybe a leadership aspect, right? Trying to understand every perspective, but then as a leader making that right decision, as you mentioned, maybe what is not really required at this point of time. So maybe let's cut it out. Let's not discuss on it. But what is really making more sense at this point of time? And as I think as a leader, maybe that person should be able to make that decision in terms of the journey, or in terms of from a vision point of view for a product.
Yeah.
And also what I really liked in what you mentioned about is you mentioned that product owners need to be ruthless. So why do you use the word ruthless over here? So I felt that this is a strong word, but then the context which you said, I mean, it fits the context, but then why did you choose to use this word ruthless?
Yeah, and to be honest, it's something that a lot of people have raised with me over the years. Ruthless. It's not meant to mean cruel, obviously, but it can feel that way at times, and there are lots of reasons why we can keep going with something. I can justify, I can make excuses, I can rationalize with myself why I should just give this a little bit longer, or just say yes to this once, or try and please this person. When actually it's not good for the product, it's not good for the organization. And being able to think, right, my job here isn't to make everyone happy, my job is to make the best decision for the product. My job isn't necessarily to make myself happy here, it's to do the best for the product. And having that ruthless mindset of, well, what is the right course of action, the best right course of action? And I talk a lot about, so there's one of my favorite songs is The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. You've got to know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away. And the best product owners will walk away from a feature, they'll walk away from a product, they will kill a feature, they'll kill a product, even when it's still potentially making money, because they know it's the right thing to do, because they could be doing something else instead. They know the opportunity cost of everything that they're doing, and they will take those difficult decisions ruthlessly for the good of the product.
Yes, and again, I mean that's a very strong emotion when we talk about ruthless. But also, if I look at from a Scrum aspect, obviously the Scrum guide also mentioned it, and if the product owner has to succeed, the entire organization must respect the decisions that they make in the sense. And I think from that aspect, again, it really makes or it puts a perspective around why it is mentioned in the Scrum guide clearly that it needs to be taken care of.
I would, if I could, and I said about empowering, they need to empower the people, but they also need to empower themselves. They're in a much better place if they have more autonomy themselves, but it's unrealistic to expect any product person to have full autonomy, have full control, like the Scrum Guide used to say they should. And in some ways, it's probably not a good thing if they did. I'll often talk to product people and say, you don't have power, as much power as you would like. And even if you did have that power, using it should be a last resort. The best product people, they use influence, they use persuasion, they use negotiation, they use rapport, they use rationale, they use experimentation and data, rather than I'm doing this because I have the badge and I have the stick. Sometimes they might need to resort to that, but it should be the very, very rare exception. Because ultimately you're going to lose people along the way, and no product owner in an agile space, in a complex, ambiguous space, is going to be able to rely on authority and expertise to get them through this. They need the buy-in and engagement of other people and skills to be able to evolve the right answer. And if you resort to power and just telling people what to do, you've not got a chance.
Wow, that's really amazing way to put. Yes, when we talk about empowerment, it's not just for the Scrum Masters to empower the team. It is also true for the product owners. And what also stood for me is you mentioned that as a product owner, we must be able to make imperfect decisions and fail early. Right? That is so important. When we are talking that. We are working in this complex environment, and which is especially when we are operating in Scrum premise, and we say that empiricism is the core of implementing Scrum, right? So if we are not able to make those decisions, fail and learn from them, so it's like we are not accepting the reality of it. And plus, as you also mentioned that if the product owner is going to show that power, then he or she is not keeping any room for improvements, right? So it would be kind of a suffocating for teams to work, and they will not like freely move here and there, and this would impact a lot on the quality of the work the team would be producing, right? So makes so much sense when you say that as product owner we must be able to make that imperfect decisions and fail early, so that we empower others to come up with the great solutions to solve the right problems.
Yes.
And this brings me to the next thought. Like, I mean, as agile practices continue to evolve, right? So what emerging trends in the product management should agile practitioners be aware of?
I mean, that's a difficult one, because I think we just need to keep reading up on anything. I find just being aware of what's going on, just listening to case studies, listening to podcasts, trying new things, I think is important. I think I'm a big fan of trying things that other people have been successful in and being mindful of other people's failures. But I think I'm a bigger fan of taking the new ideas and the new canvases and the new templates and the new roadmap tools and the new metrics like OKRs, whatever they are, and not just following them, working out what it means for us, and in many ways being the experimenter rather than the follower. So you can learn from other people, and that's great, but equally I think it's more powerful to find out something new yourself and then lead yourself. So I guess what it comes down to really is again that mindset, that personal courage to go out there and try something and not worry about whether you're doing it right or by the book, and just have that experimental curiosity and ruthlessness to be able to stop something when you realize it's not working for you, and dial it up and stick it out when you think it probably is still worth sticking to. I'm not too sure about the new things that people should be looking out for. The temptation is to say AI, because everybody says AI these days, and sure, you can get some benefits from that. But I think, it's more ways of learning about you and learning about people.
Yeah, I mean, I see that makes a lot of sense in that aspect, and also how in a certain way, how do you think in the given context can we leverage Scrum to enhance product management and build better products? Do you think, or do you have any thoughts around it?
For me, I think the biggest benefit of an agile approach is being able to reduce the front end of the life cycle still. I think we've still got a long way to go. A lot of the organizations that I work with anyway still have a long way to go in actually reducing the waste in the discovery side of things, and getting into, it's a bit cliche these days, but continuous discovery. Because even when we've crossed that chasm, even when we've got a product that we've got product market fit and product solution fit, things are still evolving regularly, and it's very easy to get tied into, well, this works for us now and we've solved this and we're making money now. But the life cycle of a product is significantly shorter than it's ever been, especially products that are especially organizations that are single product organizations. The resilience there is very low. The risk is very high, because if we don't keep innovating, if we don't keep evolving, then we as an organization will get left behind. I know many organizations these days, it's, well, let's build a product and sell it, and then we've moved on, and then it's part of another product or another organization's family and suite. But if we're to take this sort of longer term mindset, then thinking, well, I've got this idea, I've worked it through, and it's so tempting to think, well, I've done the hard bit. Now it's just about cranking out low unit cost and maximizing that part of the life cycle curve. But very, very rarely do we have that luxury for very long.
True.
I think that's
so
the
true.
future.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, we always do not have that leverage of doing that. So maybe as a last question, we would like to understand uh, any tips for Scrum Masters or the product owners from your end to kind of up their game.
So it would be silly of me to not mention what I've been putting a lot of effort into myself, effectively my product development, which is the Agile Mastery Institute, where I've been creating longer term training and development pathways, a combination of classroom and coaching, to help people actually learn some new skills, but then reflect on those skills with an experienced guide. I think that's a big game changer for product people who have traditionally just been told either work it out yourself or go along to this one-off training course. Actually having that consistency and continuity is a big game changer. But if I was to say one thing that would be probably the most important thing, I think, is going back to that second part of my life, which is coaching. I think the biggest thing for product people is to understand themselves and to get something really bespoke and specific to their context and help them become more self-sufficient and resilient and reflective on their own practice through someone who is not involved directly in what they're doing. They have no ulterior motive other than to help you work through your situation, your challenge, and help you become more mindful. And I'll be honest, that's the part of my job that I enjoy the most as well. So if you've got any product people out there listening who thought, do you know what, I'd like to try some coaching, I'd like to see what it could do for me, then get in touch.
Amazing. And you spoke about the Agile Mastery training, right? So definitely we are going to leave those links as well for the listeners in the description, so that they can have a look at it and they can enroll for this. And I know for the fact that it's like a 6 months course. It's not just like 2-day certification course. Then we can imagine the amount of learning anyone would get from that. Having said that, thank you so much, Geoff, for joining us today. It was great talking to you, and it was really an honor to have you on our show. Thank you so much for all that you do for this community, and we are really blessed to have you on our show. Thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this episode patiently till the end. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll meet you again in the next episode. Till then, if you like our podcast show, then do like, share, subscribe, and let us know your feedback in the comment section. You can also listen to the episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible. Thank you.